All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? Excuse me, William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Now, when Antonio Pierce became the interim head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders earlier this season, he walked into a mess. Excuse me, I say this because the Raiders were 3-5, and you could see that this team had tuned out head coach Josh McDaniels completely. But in stepped Raiders linebackers coach Antonio Pierce, who was tasked with keeping the ship afloat for the silver and black for the remainder of the season. He got things started on the right foot, back to back wins over the New York Giants and New York Jets before losing three in a row, which included losing 3-0 at home to the Minnesota Vikings, but then bouncing back a couple of Thursday nights ago against the Chargers for that record-setting 63-21 win at home. And then, of course, that resulted in Brandon Staley being fired as the head coach of the Lightning Bolts. And then today, pulling off the upset of all upsets, as the Raiders just went to Arrowhead, a place where they have not had a lot of success at recently, and knocking off the Kansas City Chiefs 20-14. Now, under Pierce, the Raiders are 4-3. They're 7-8 overall this season, and they're still mathematically alive to get a wild card spot on the AFC side. And for my money, I don't care what anybody says. Antonio Pierce has done enough to be the next head coach of the Raiders. You think about Pierce's NFL career. It started with Washington and then, of course, with the New York Football Giants. And he played with a chip on his shoulder as a linebacker throughout his NFL career. And, of course, he was a catalyst for the Giants when they upset the previously unbeaten New England Patriots in Super Bowl number 42. And the way that he played with that chip on his shoulder, he's bringing that same mentality to the Raiders. Now, the Raiders defense today, they set the tone all day long. As you know, they were coming after Patrick Mahomes early and often. You think about it, they had two defensive touchdowns in this contest within a span of about 7 seconds. That fumble return for a touchdown late in the second quarter. And then right after that, Jack Jones picking off Patrick Mahomes and taking it back 33 yards for the score to make it 17-7. This Raiders defense sacking Patrick Mahomes 4 times today, but honestly, it seemed a lot more than that, just due to the fact that Patrick Mahomes was running for his life, and honestly, he's been doing a lot of that this season. But the Raiders, to their credit, because it wasn't pretty for them, they won this contest today in spite of the fact that they only had 62 yards passing from rookie quarterback Aiden O'Connell. Um, Zamir White, 145 yards on the ground with 22 carries. Of course, no Josh Jacobs today for the Raiders. And then getting those yards late when the Raiders needed to ice that game, late in this contest, and they were able to do that. And you just think about the resolve. You just think about the grit that the Raiders showed today. It wasn't pretty, and credit to their defense and credit to their running game because again, they were not getting a lot out of their passing attack. And it's one of those where when you're one dimensional and teams know that you're going to run the football and they still can't stop it, that's an attitude. And that attitude begins with the head coach. Antonio Pierce wants to go out there and make his team more physical than their opponent. We've seen that because, again, even though that they lost to the Vikings 3-0, they still limited this team to just 3 points. And the Vikings scored that field goal late in the contest. You look at the Raiders under Antonio Pierce. They've been in every game. I mean, you think about it. They lost to Miami a couple of weeks ago on the road, and that game was much more competitive than most people expected. And then a couple of weeks ago, when they lost at home to the Kansas City Chiefs, they lost the contest 31-17. Yes, but the Raiders jumped out to a 14-0 lead due to their ability to run the football. And I guarantee you, Antonio Pierce took some notes from that game. It was a little bit less than a month ago when the Chiefs and Raiders had that contest. And of course, the Raiders were ready for the rematch today. So again, like I said before, in my opinion, Antonio Pierce has done enough to be the next Raiders full-time head coach. Now, this is going to come down to Raiders team owner Mark Davis. And the question that I'm posing, has he learned from his mistake a couple of years ago when he chose Josh McDaniels over Rich Bisaccia? He chose sizzle over substance, because if you go back and remember the 2021 Raiders when when John Gruden got fired midseason, Rich Bisaccia held his team together. They rallied. They got a postseason spot. They got to the wild card game, or the wild card round rather, and they were within an inch or two of beating the Cincinnati Bengals. And of course, the Bengals went on to win the AFC Championship. You just have to wonder, if you're the Raiders, what could have been for you had you advanced to that game from that game. But nonetheless, Mark Davis decided to go with Josh McDaniels. Why? I don't know. And of course, just like it was for Josh McDaniels when he was a head coach of the Denver Broncos more than a decade ago, he really ruined the tenor around this team. And now you're trying to start it over once more again. The Raiders need plenty of work if they're going to turn this thing around. Don't get me wrong. But I do believe that Antonio Pierce has done more than enough to earn the right to be that guy to try to turn it around going forward from 2024 and beyond. Now, on the flip side for the Kansas City Chiefs, they're now 2-4 in their last 6 games. And luckily for them, they are still in the driver's seat to win the AFC West. But they're going to have to go on the road this in the postseason if they want to get back to the Super Bowl. Miami keeps winning. Of course, the Baltimore Ravens just started in a big time showdown with the San Francisco 49ers rather tonight. And the Ravens and Dolphins are set to get it on next Sunday, the two top teams in the AFC. So luckily for the Chiefs, the Jaguars continue to slide. The AFC South winner might just get 9 games. So if you're Kansas City, you're probably going to get that 3 slot, but nonetheless, you're going to have to go on the road at some point, at least once this postseason, if you're going to get back to the Super Bowl. And this is something that Patrick Mahomes has not experienced. This is a no frills team around Patrick Mahomes, and I think it's catching up to the Chiefs right now. A lot of issues on the offensive line, a lot of issues. At the wide receiver position, and these are things that Kansas City. I don't know if you can shore these things up in time for the postseason, but nonetheless, these are things that are going to have to be shored up in the offseason. This was a division that has been dominated for quite some time by the Chiefs. It's no longer the case. The Broncos beat them already once this season, and so have the Vegas Raiders. But if you're Kansas City, this is not the type of momentum that that you need heading into the postseason. But on the flip side, it's right now, it's all about the Raiders and Antonio Pierce. And again, I do believe that he has done enough to warrant this job. The Raiders still got a shot. They're at Indianapolis this Sunday in a game that won't be easy against the Colts. And then they finish up at home against the Denver Broncos, a team that they beat to begin this season. But nonetheless, big time win for Antonio Pierce, big time win for the Silver and Black. And just when this franchise needed some stability, it looks like they've got it in an unlikely source. And I'm not trying to go out there and be a homer. I'm not trying to sit up there and be a cheerleader, but I do believe Antonio Pierce has done enough to be the next head coach for the Raiders. So, folks, that's going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you haven't already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'll be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. You can check it out, drop a line, and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin, and I am signing off. And I'm saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.